Might take some serious research to find the last time Miami came off a bye week undefeated, but here we are at 4-0. Hopefully, they've taken good advantage of this bye. They're back in ACC play. In fact, this would be the ACC opener, would it not? Against Georgia Tech. How about that? 3-touchdown win against the Yellow Jackets with a whole lot more to play for this time around in 2023. We got Justin DeTavio here breaking things down for us. You can join Justin's work on the State of the U. Justin, how's it going tonight?
Good. Not bad at all. We're, everybody's excited about the game. It's a night game, so that's always fun, to get a chance to open up the ACC with 8 o'clock, kickoff. A little late for some of us old folks, but, gonna power through nonetheless.
Yeah, that may not be over until 11:30 or so, but for you and other Canes fans, you hope it's over maybe about an hour or so before that in reality with a nice 3-score lead or so.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, that's the beauty of college football is that it's a lot more unpredictable, right? Where I feel like with the NFL, you can kind of see it coming from a mile away for a lot of games. And then, good games are usually, other than the Bills and Dolphins the other day, are usually good games. But with college football, you never know. I mean, it's really is a crapshoot, of what you're going to see with the fact that they are not professionals.
Yeah. So looking at Miami's growth through 4 games, what area of this team, whether it's a position unit or otherwise, do you think has really been the cause of this, or maybe the most obvious area of improvement?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I went back and looked at some stats between Miami and Georgia Tech in last year and then this year, right? Where each team is pretty much better almost in every category, right? So if you use Bill Connolly's SP plus, overall, both teams are improved, right? Miami's moved at this point last year. Miami was like 74th overall, and now they're 12th. Georgia Tech was 96, now they're 77th, right? So if you look at SP plus offense, Tech is almost, half where they were, where you want to say, double as good. I don't know, that's terrible language, but they went from 103rd to 65th. Miami went from 72nd to 17th. So there's a lot of improvement from both sides all over. I mean, I think one data point that's gotten worse for both would be kicking, but Miami is a lot less drastic as far as, from 5th to 19th overall isn't that bad, but 89th to 99th is terrible. And, if you read State of the U, I am extremely obsessed with kicking, right? And I believe, as a high school coach, especially, kicking and culture should be the head coach's 2 focal points. College, I don't think is that far off. I understand that there are people who are, Mike Leach types that are going to be like, well, I'm the offensive coordinator, I'm going to call the plays. But I think there's just so much going on that it essentially has to be, kicking and culture, right? And those need to be the things. So when the kicking gets worse, you worry a little bit, right? Because that is definitely a sign of bad shit that's going to happen during the game, right? You're going to miss easy field goals. Clemson had that field goal. They beat Florida State. They make that easy chip shot sort of field goal, having to call a guy out of online classes and away from moving. How does that happen at a Clemson, right? That stuff seems mind-blowing, but people don't focus on kicking as much as they should. And for a guy that fancies himself such a culture person, that could be Mario Cristobal, it could be Dabo Swinney, it could be Brent Key. I mean, Nick Saban, clearly a big culture guy. It's hard to fathom how some of these guys have these kicking issues when that could be a true focal point. The other thing, looking at it, is for Miami, they've gotten a little sloppier with penalties. I know it seems hard to believe, but they also have played a lot more younger players later in games. So some of that's kind of a offsetting balance, right? Like, when do the penalties happen? What type of penalties are they? Those are always questions to ask that I don't have the total answer for. But, obviously going into this game or last year, I think the teams were like, 4-5 and 4-5 or something like that. It was really like, the proverbial toilet bowl to have one where this one matters, at least for one team. It will matter really big for Georgia Tech if they can win. It is a pretty big deal. But to be 4-0, remember, bye weeks have been Miami's like curse, right? Under Manny Diaz, and I think even Mario Cristobal lost after the bye last year, right? And so, or the idle week, I guess technically not a bye week, but you're seeing that. So what does that mean? I would say it's a culture thing, right? Because how good is that week of practice? Did you beat the crap out of the guys, or did you let them rest and recovery? And the way that works with strength and conditioning and whatnot is always interesting too.
Justin, back to kicking and the significance of the kicking game in college football or any level of football, but we'll focus on college, of course, now versus what it used to be. So if you are very basic about it, there are 3 parts to every football game, and special teams is 1/3. Now, whether it's 1/3 of the plays, I know I've seen numbers on that, but it's been a long time. I don't think it's quite 1/3 of the plays. And I think even beyond that, some of those plays are somewhat obviously an extra point is almost a given. So the significance of that play is minuscule compared to other plays because it's almost a layup, almost a layup. Now we've changed the rules to a degree for the safety of the players that has diminished the kicking game even more, meaning you got to kick off and first of all, the kickers are just better and have gotten better through the years, so they're kicking the ball through the end zone. Number 2, the kick returner can catch the ball anywhere on the field, and you advance the ball to the 25-yard line, so they're very much coached to catch the football and fair catch it, and so that negates that play as being meaningful in any way, even though I completely disagree with that rule because it flies in the face of the framework of the game. There is no justification for why somebody should be able to catch the ball at the 3 or the 9 or the 12 or the 24 and have it be advanced to the 25. It's just a contrived situation that doesn't make any sense, but that's another point. Punters are better and they can pinpoint, and obviously many of them take the rugby style and limit half the field or 2/3 of the field and pin. And so there are less returns. I know that I looked this up during one of these kind of discussions in the last year, and I just thought for the team that either leads the nation in punt returns or is last, I wonder how that compares to 10 years ago. And it was significant, the number of punt returns and how much that has decreased in the last 10 years. So while the kicking game's important, the rules have downgraded the significance.
In essence, yeah, there was that really interesting video of Bill Belichick talking for like 10 straight minutes about the validity of having a full-time long snapper on a team of 53 guys, right? I think that there are professional long snappers at this point, right? Full-time, they're usually a walk-on type person. Maybe they get a scholarship in a big ceremony or whatever, in the middle of practice or something. But that is a way to eliminate that in a sense, right? But Miami had a punt blocked against Texas A&M, right, which got him in a big hole and had that game not completely flipped. That could be something that hurts you against another team, right? Obviously, didn't against them. The punt return issues for Miami. I don't know what they're doing with the dude in the 37. Look, if I had my choice, the random guy on the return team would be wearing the 37. My returner would be as comfortable as possible. So questions to ask would be I've hoped that some beat reporter would ask this to Mario Cristobal. Do you practice with 2 jerseys on? Like, so does your receiver practice every single punt return they take with the extra jersey pulled over? Some people Velcro them on, but these look pulled over. Does he practice with it? Because if he doesn't, that's a fool's errand, right? Like, why aren't you? How we do one thing is how we do everything. Is it? I would love to know if they practice with it on. And they probably did after the first 2 disasters, right? Maybe they did. I'd love to know why the other random guy isn't wearing it. Like, if you've got a returner and that's your guy, why isn't the other random person wearing the jersey? That doesn't. I just think you would want the guy doing this with 11 people chasing him down would be the most comfortable SOB on the field, right? I want him as comfortable as possible. What do you do every single day? Oh, I wear one jersey and I go like, okay, well, let's do it. You don't all of a sudden start feeling punts backwards or something, right? It doesn't make sense. So I think there are things that are being overlooked at times. Miami's averaging 4.4 yards per punt return. The Georgia Tech main returner's got 11. 7 yards doesn't sound like a lot, but there's your field goal going from 34 to 41. College kickers are going to make a lot more 34s than 41s, right? And punt return yards, Leary's a really good, kick returner, but Rashard Smith has 44 yards a return. If you do have a guy that you trust to field the thing and actually run it and not call a fair catch, the reason they changed that rule to that kind of weird window there was because they're so good, like you said, the kickers were just lofting the ball up and landing it right on the 5 on the number and killing the guy. And so they were like, well, this whole taking a touchback to the 25 doesn't work if they never put it in the end zone on purpose. We got to change the rule again. Yeah, they're just constantly, changing the rule to, I guess, kind of fit whatever it is they think works or doesn't work. I thought the XFL 1.0, or I guess 2.0, shouldn't say 1.0, that was the old McMahon one, but 1.0 or 2.0, where they had the close, the guys ran back in the line and all that stuff. I thought that way they did the kick really worked well. God, at the Pop Warner level, I look back on playing Pop Warner football and thinking, how the hell did they let us line up an onside kick and just kill some poor 9-year-old every time? Like, as a person, as a player, like that was my job. I kicked a little bit. So what do the rules of the kicking game are very odd, but it's all easy until you screw up. They say you never know the long snapper's name until he bombs one over the punter's head, right? You don't even worry about a punt return until it's obviously been screwed up for 4 straight games, and hopefully an off week fixes that. But Miami hadn't returned a kick in years for a touchdown. Somebody might have said it actually was the Duke game with all the laterals from. I think I was living in Oregon. That might have been 2016, so a lot of moves ago. Just food for thought on a kicking game. And I think it also is an attention to detail thing. If Bill Belichick is obsessive about the kicking game, it must matter. And the guy's won a lot of Super Bowls, both as an assistant and a head coach.
Yeah, I thought I might be the only one that was thinking the same thing, and I haven't thought any more about it since exactly what you brought up about having to put the extra jersey on before he hits the field. It just seems like it went through my mind as it being a point of that mattered, and then I thought, yeah, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't, probably won't come up, probably won't be a big deal, but you try to eliminate all those things, and I'm thinking, and he's kind of hurt you where he should be focused on his job, and it's difficult to catch a football that's fluttering in the sky 50 yards above your head. That's a difficult thing to do. Go out and try it, folks. Seconds before that, he's messing with his, trying to get it on.
Yeah. Well, and now a coach is looking at something else. Look at Notre Dame and Ohio State. You want those guys being head count guys, right? Like in the high school level, we always had a guy up top who was the head count guy. Count them up for me. You'd have to repeat that as the head coach. Hey, count them up for me. We got 11. We got 11. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we got 11. You sure? Yeah, we got 11. We got 11. All right. Okay, let's go. Like, I would double check every time. Like, you sure we have 11? Because it looks like there's damn 10 guys or there's 12 guys. You would count that over and over. Well, now 3 people are putting the damn shirt on this guy. Like, all people who could be doing another job, coaching their position group, doing God knows what else that they could possibly be doing, like counting heads. And then too many players in the field. Florida had that issue. It didn't help them because they still give a touchdown. And I'm trying to think of another game where it was just, Trent Dilfer losing his absolute mind like an idiot on the sideline at one of his assistant coaches and treating him like shit. That was just not a good situation, but it cost them the game. They had 13. They ran one guy off. They had 12 in the field. I mean, pretty much cost them the game against Tulane. So that's just, things to think about. What else could you be doing besides dressing a guy who already is dressed? And then having him, like you said, think about other stuff. Why is he having to think about anything? The guy returning the punt, he's thinking about nothing but returning the punt. And punt returning sucks. It's really hard. I've gone back there just as I was an offensive line. I never got to return one. But I went back there a few times just to mess around with it, practice and stuff. And you're like, damn, this is really damn hard. There's no easy part of returning a punt. All of it sucks.
No doubt. Falconer TRX, appreciate you being here. Super sticker. We appreciate you for that. And also, yeah, Falconer TRX. Would Devin Hester have the same impact today?
Whew. I mean, you would hope so well, first, he wouldn't drop this many damn punts. But second, you would hope so on a kick return. If Smith's got 44, what would Devin Hester have, right? Like, I mean, and also, man, you just hope somebody would have been a better fit at figuring out something for him to do in college. Like, they tried to toss him the ball a few times, and like on offense, they just never figured it out. You think in the era now of throwing so many bubbles and smokes, and the fact that all he would have to do is kind of run like slant over and over again, they probably would have figured out a little better. The West Coast stuff Miami ran with Chudzinski, I think it was just a little more difficult for some of those guys to grasp as a concept of, we want you to do all this stuff, I want you to do this too. That's not everybody's aptitude per se.
Justin, what do you think about Miami's approach to the running back situation? That's an interesting position. I always like to get guys' takes on it that really know the team and know football, like yourself, because you've got a running back position, but you got the task of running the football. But there are different types of runs. Obviously, there's pass blocking, there's receiving out of the backfield as just kind of an outlet guy, but also a more of a pattern, or being part of the play and being the actual focus or target of that play. And you got Henry Parrish, you got Donald Chaney, and you got Mark Fletcher, who seem to be the guys that they're going to be working with this year.
Yeah, I mean, yes, in college football, it's crazy because one of the biggest gaps between high school and college is the running back position. In high school, half the time the guys aren't even asked to get in pass protection. I've coached at places where we just put him out in the flat every single time. He never, I mean, he had to be told to be in pass pro, and his job was like, get up into the line and find some shit to do. Like, we didn't coach it hardly at all, right? You can get away with that in high school. We made the playoffs and blah, 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 won some games. You can get away with it. In college, you ain't getting away with it. Like, and the difference between being draftable and not is, can you get involved in pass protection? Because in the NFL, obviously, it's huge. And almost every single time the back is involved, it's usually a kind of like, if they blitz when they don't get out into the flat, right? So like, they do all their different stuff off of whether or not the linebacker comes. So the back's looking at a linebacker, he comes up, the linebacker doesn't come, then you get out into the flat, then you run a little angle Texas route, then you run a choice route or whatever. A lot of it's if then sort of ideas for the back. That's a lot to think about. So if you've never done that in high school, right? Almost everything you do is either a called play or it's just go swing, go swing, go swing. And most of the time in high school, maybe not at the IMGs of the world or the STAs or somebody like that, but in most of the high schools, you're either gap or zone. In college, you're going to wind up both to some degree, right? Like, maybe not, as married to it as some people are, but you are going to wind up doing both. Miami does both, right? You're going to see inside zone, split zone, outside zone, but then you're going to see all of your pin pulls and power, and even maybe some, Florida State runs G series like a high school wing T team, right? So you're going to see some of that stuff where there is going to be pulling, and it's different than zone, right? I mean, when you're running power, you put your hand on the guy's back, and you throw him forward. In zone, it's all the hesitating and waiting, and slow too fast through and all that stuff.
Right, folks, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. This is our Wednesday show. Typically, Cam Underwood's here, State of the U. Cam can't make it tonight. We have an excellent fill-in here. Been here many times. Justin Tattavio, join him and his work, X's and O's breakdown at State of the U as well. All right, looking for comments and questions. Anything that you guys have? Domain Kane at 352. What do you guys think of Cyrus Moss, the freshman? Had high hopes for him, especially with Coach JT, but have not seen much of anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the pass rush is disappointing. I came on here the last time and said I thought Jason Taylor was put on the field as an on-field coach to be able to sign State Thomas Aquinas players. And people were, all in the chat, comments bitching about that commentary. Is it true or is it false? I don't know. They've been without one of their better pass rushers, but I think, that kind of thing has to be expected. It's not ballet. So people are going to get injured. So how do you not have a backup? I've always been a huge fan of Harvey. He gets played around a lot, and so he winds up dropping and he winds up, giving some pressure. He's kind of a run stop guy too. I don't think he's ever had a time to focus on one thing per se, just the way the last two guys have really used him. But, yeah, I think somebody like a Moss or a Kelly or something like that, I would have thought would have a little more, statistical prowess, I guess you could say. But, I don't sit there and tally up pressures and things like that. So who knows? That's not something that I do. I don't have that kind of free time. I got free time. I don't have that kind of free time to pull a pro football focus and claim I watched all those snaps and know who got what pressure or whatever. I don't got that kind of time.
Haynes King comes into this game at 64.5% completion percentage, 15 TDs, 4 picks. We've got a running back at Jamal Haynes, 376 yards, 5.8 per carry. Another back at 5.1. So they're running the ball pretty effectively. He's at 5.1. Trey Cooley. Of course, the conversation about Georgia Tech goes back a few years with Jeff Collins leaving and him trying to turn over a roster from the triple option attack. And he was unsuccessful. And now Brent Key steps on the field mid last season as an offensive line coach, and they start playing instantly better football. Is there anything that you've seen out of Georgia Tech?
I watched parts of the Bowling Green game live, but also then obviously watched it for State of the U. Excuse me, the film article forecast would be up tomorrow at 8 Eastern. But that was a rough game. It started off really well. King threw a pretty big play action touchdown early. It looked really good. And then it seemed like it just sort of fell apart for Tech. I don't know exactly what was going on there. They have some big play threats. They have a guy with over 10 receptions, which is usually like the litmus test at this point in the season. About halfway point, give or take, you start looking at, do you have 10 catches or more? And then by the time that it's the end of the season, I would say 20 catches or more, you can kind of hold statistical data to them. Some guy has 4 catches, I'm not going to care what yards per catch he had, right? But they have a guy with 18.9 yards a catch. So if that guy gets a hold of you, and then their number 2 has 14.9, right? Miami's highest yards per catch on a guy with 10 or more is Restrepo with 14.8. So they have 2 big play threats at receiver. And King is averaging like 8.9 yards an attempt. Which yards per attempt is usually kind of the gauge I like to use. And then obviously people will say interceptions don't matter. Interceptions matter. So, as a coach, I always thought interceptions mattered a lot. That's a shout out to Marcus Moeller if he's out there, listening. Yeah, your interceptions mattered. It's a joke. He did throw a lot of interceptions, but he can take a joke. He threw, King's thrown 4 interceptions, I think 2 in the last game. That's rough, but I don't think that's going to hinder him from wanting to go deep. Cam Kinchins, somebody just said this, he's supposed to be back. That I'm excited about that. Obviously, that was a real downer on that game. You're like all hyped up, ready. I was going out, going to Durham, going out. Then you're like, well, damn, I'm sitting here on the phone hitting refresh while I'm sitting there in the car. Like, is he all right? Is he all right? Is he all right? You're just waiting to hear something. So that, that was definitely obviously a way bigger downer for him than me. But, you're kind of a downer. But I mean, Parrish is averaging 7.9 yards a carry. Everyone always says that the next, favorite player on the team or whatever is always the backup quarterback. Well, I don't think anybody wants to see that guy right now. But the backup running backs, but Henry Parrish is 7.9 yards a carry. I mean, that's a shitload of yardage, right? Especially for a guy whose speed wasn't supposed to be his thing. So, I think Miami has the ability, I think, to offset some of the big plays, but Tech's big play ability, it'll be something to look at, especially Kinchins has got to have a little ring rust on him.
CJ says that he's tired of seeing the defensive ends drop into coverage because I'm something in the backside of the backfield are hurting us. Oh,
yeah. So somebody had asked on Twitter to go with this. That's perfect. What I would do if I was trying to attack Miami's defense as an offensive coordinator, and without a doubt, trying to get the linebackers running with my in those drop defensive ends, running with my running back is absolutely what I would do. And Tech likes to put Christian Leary in the backfield, you know, and get him into different situations. Right? He was kind of like a swing RPO sort of guy. He's kind of done getting pitches, running the ball, being thrown out there, running a wheel. I mean, he's going to wind up being the guy to keep your eye on. Is going to be Leary. Like, how many different things is he going to be able to do in order to really just be kind of a pain in the ass, especially when you're going to try to play. If you're really going to try to play man with the two inside linebackers, they're going to have to really keep an eye on what's going on with him and where he's lined up, because that'll be an issue. Maui Goa, those are some big dudes, both of them. And the linebacker is a thick dude. It's hard to be that thick and run, with a guy that is very shifty like that. Where did he play? He was at Alabama before, I think, Leary. Like that. Nick Saban's recruiting speed. So, you look at that and you wonder, damn, that's a bad matchup, and so if you that is what I would attack, if I was them. I would be trying to see, are they in man? And a lot of times you figure that out based on motion, right? So you run a few motions a few times and see who bumps to where. You got guys up top. That's their job, is to kind of write it down. Okay, he's bumping here, you're bumping there. We see the rotation. A couple of years ago, Georgia Tech saw a good rotation. They would run fly sweep, fake it, and then give split zone back the other way. They busted a couple touchdowns on it, right? That's what those guys are doing. They're throwing the first few out in motion just to see who rotates, right? Who moves? Do they move at all? Do they just bump over, right? Okay, so they're in zone. They just look like man. You're checking a lot of that kind of stuff that way. Does your D line move with it? Because sometimes you'll bump guys down. Kick to a 3 when the tight end goes into motion and settles up. So a lot of that's just, how does that work? If I'm Georgia Tech, I'm putting Leary in motion, seeing who follows him and who doesn't on the first couple snaps. And after that, just trying to find ways to get it to him if they're going to stay in man with linebackers, or they're going to have a defensive end cover him. Good luck.
I know, since you coach and played, I think the level of respect that you have for these guys is different than the typical fan, and the respect for the opponent is a little bit difficult, because you have to actually, instead of just sitting at home going, well, this team's a 3-touchdown favorite, why are they not blowing them out, kind of thing, that the athletes have to actually go out there and compete. And so is there, when you watch Georgia Tech, do you expect this to be a competitive game?
Yeah. I mean, I think everything that the players have been saying in the media, I don't think it's lip service. I think what Miami's players have been saying is true. They're a good team. They had a shitty game. And you also don't want to look back as a player and go, well, last year was I shitty because I lost to Middle Tennessee? Oh, like that's another thing that kind of comes up in your head. But losing one game doesn't mean you can't step up and win another. I mean, one thing I'll give Manny Diaz his time in Miami was he would lose some stupid game that you couldn't believe and then come back and either win or have a great game against somebody else. It was like hitting, the Men in Black button thing, right? And they would just forget and they'd come out and win some game. I was like, they're going to lose this thing. Nope. They came back and beat Florida State by a lot, or whatever happened after losing somebody you wouldn't expect. So again, it really isn't any given Saturday sort of thing, because of its college, and you never know what these guys have been doing all week, and what was this off week like, and who's hurt and who's banged up. I mean, Cristobal's not going to tell you that. Who's playing, he's not going to give that away. And people just see certain things that work. I know Georgia Tech was really excited about playing Miami in 2020, and then the game got canceled because they saw how bad Miami was against gap runs. And they were like, well, we're ready to just gap run it down their throat. And then game got canceled, right? And some people are better at scheming to different looks. Some guys can really scheme against an even front. And some guys can really scheme against odd fronts, and they're not as strong other ways, you know. And I know Georgia Tech's been really good against, like, NC State's 33. Excuse me, stack. They've been really good against the stack. Not as good against the 4-2-5, right? But they found ways where teams that really roll those safeties down to kind of pick at that. So it always winds up, you know, an interesting kind of cat and mouse sort of thing. I mean, they're obviously playing a lot better of offense. They had a little bit of a blip, but, you know, for the most part, I mean, shoot, they're scoring. I want to say it's, let's see, I got the number right here. Over a touchdown more, I think, per game this year than they did last year, which moved them from 124th to 49th in offense. So they're scoring more. You know, Miami's just scoring a hell of a lot more than they did last year. So, which is fun. It's fun for somebody like me that loves to see a lot of points. You know, I was a defensive coach for a long time, but I can't stand those Iowa 7-6ers. I want to see, you know, the old Mike Leach UCLA game that was 63-61 or whatever it was. It's more fun to me. So, or that USC Colorado game from the other day. That's more fun to me. So I think, yeah, when you look as a coaching mindset and you know some of the players and you know some of the coaches, you met them and stuff, you have a different viewpoint on what it's like and what an opponent does and how hard it is to win a football game.
Georgia Tech and Miami getting together on the ACC Network Saturday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time. We got Justin Tatavio here from State of the U. Get on over there and check out Justin's work, and what in particular is already posted or about to be posted by you over there.
Yes, there's a film forecast will be up, which is like the weekly kind of preview. It usually comes up Thursdays at 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. And so that'll have SP plus type stuff. It'll have yards per play, points per play, turnovers, penalties, anything, you know, I call it the Doppler, right? Good shitty pun. You know, a weather pun for all the things I think go into a win, right? So, you know, and then I have a joke that's the Josh Gaddis honorary time of possession award, because that doesn't mean anything at all, right? Like you can hold it for 40 minutes and lose, or 4 minutes and win, or whatever. You know, so who wins that one? But, you know, that's important. And usually in that section will be something about kicking. So whether it's the 40 yards per return, or it's missing field goals or extra points, or maybe somebody's just got a punt blocked recently or something along those lines, you know, that kind of goes into the Doppler section. And then it's usually their offense, what works against it. If you look at the State of the U Twitter, I usually put up on sometime in the middle of the week. This time, because of the off week, it was Sunday, I think, a play that I think could work. You know, what would work against Miami, and then for Miami, what would work against whatever they're going to see defensively. And so, kind of what's open. To use Dub Maddox from the R4 series, to use his terminology as what's open, right? So what would work? Could be a run, could be a pass. Sometimes it's just an RPO tag, you know, against those rotating safeties or something like that. You know, a lot of that stuff will work. You know, for Georgia Tech this week, the big fear play is that post-snap RPO. When they pull and they throw to Leary late down the line, I think that's kind of going to be an issue, especially when we talked about the linebackers covering. That's a late throw, right? Like, and it's borderlining on being against the rules. And then, but what's open against Georgia Tech, clearly Bowling Green love crossing routes. So, you know, being able to throw shallow cross or mesh, or, you know, any kind of like over route that switches up at late, I think that'll work against Tech. You know, and again, if I was Georgia Tech and I'm trying to do something against Miami, I'm hitting the flats all day and making them cover the running back, and putting different, even if the running back they can't catch, I'm putting anybody else back there. So Leary in the backfield, forcing you to cover him out of the backfield and switch what you want to do, right? To make you uncomfortable. If DC wants to play man with the linebacker and you make him stop, it's uncomfortable for everybody there.
Especially mid-season, when it's difficult to change much of anything. How much, and I'm speaking in generalities because every team does something different, I'm sure, to a certain extent. Does a team like Miami scout its opponent and then look at, let's say, there was somewhat a surprising result last week. Bowling Green defeats Georgia Tech. Okay, what did Bowling Green do? And what were you mentioned the crossing routes. well, everybody's running crossing routes, but if there's something that Bowling Green's doing that we don't necessarily have in our playbook, but we have things similar to it, or do we actually throw in a play or two, not too much, but a play or two that's something that we're not doing currently, but we think we can teach in a session because we think we could take advantage of something?
Yeah, you could. I mean, you're right that it's a little late to keep putting in too much. I'm a proponent of like this point, man. It should be in, and you could put tags and wrinkles on it, but the basis of everything you're doing has got to be in probably by now. Like, this is the game where it's all going to come out, right? Like saving this play, like that's not as real as people want to believe that it is. You're going to see tags off of it, and okay, they've been running shallow cross. The outside receiver always goes vertical. All of a sudden, he's starting to post, or he's digging, or they're getting 2 digs or something. All right, those little things are post corner. Those little things will be added in, but I don't think anything too crazy. I think I was watching a friend of mine's film because I was out sick for a couple days, so I was at home doing nothing, and he sent me every single one of their games, and I to self scout for him, right? Kind of like third party self scout. And I was watching it, and I said, one thing that you're doing is getting too cute. Like, you don't have to stop running a play and call something else the next play. I mean, if X play is working, run the damn thing again. Like, you really don't have to change plays every single call. The idea, like when you're playing like a Madden or something and you keep calling the same play, shit, if it works, it works. I think I was coaching some, out in Oregon, we ran the same play like 8 out of 9 times for 70 yards and a touchdown. The one time we didn't call it, we got stopped. I said, screw it, go back to the other play. We ran it again. And then we just drove it down the field. They never fixed it. It's really hard in high school, especially. I don't even care what level you're at, even Texas, Georgia, blah, 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 New Jersey, wherever you are. It's really hard to make changes on the field. You can change a play call and you can try to get some kind of other front in, but what the guys are seeing is what matters. It's your OODA loop, right? It's what you're seeing, what your eyes can compute and observe, orient, decide next. And that's what matters. And so you're not fixing that on the field. So call the same damn thing over and over again. Yeah, so you've got mesh, and you're going to call, those are your double crossers over the middle. They tag hands, right? And let's say, you've got an option route to the one outside receiver, and the back's going to keep swinging. And all of a sudden, you just tell the back, all right, you've got the wheel, and the outside receiver, you've got the post, and now you've got post wheel out there. And yeah, the quarterback's read changes, but every 10 other people, nothing changes, right? Like, you've given him a tag. Instead of having a post as an option, nope, it's the only option now. And the wheel was an op. Nope, it's no more reading it. Just run the damn wheel. And now you're going post wheel mesh as opposed to the mesh being the first part or whatever. Like, the quarterback has to know that. And you'd hope the quarterback's the smartest guy in the field. And after that, everybody else is doing the same damn thing pretty much anyway. So what's the difference, right? And so I think you can manipulate in a way what you're doing without changing a whole lot. And don't be afraid to call the same shit 3 times in a row. I think everyone thinks it's too obvious. It's not. I mean, they're thinking the same, it's all reverse psychology, right? Like, they're thinking they'll never call that damn thing 3 times. Why not? Right? If it works, it works. Run it till they stop. Right? I think TCU ran power read, inverted veer power read a long time ago when Andy Dalton was the quarterback, like over and over and over again in some game, and beat like an Oklahoma State or somebody, just gashing one play over and over again. Yeah, why not? If they're not going to adjust, just keep doing it. And so people get too cute and they don't call the same play over and over again like they should. Look, Bobby Petrino did it to Miami a long time ago. You had Harry Douglas, and I can't think of the other receiver's name. Actually, Brian Braun might have been a damn quarterback, and he was calling the same play over and over again. I mean, he called shallow cross like 1,000 times. Until they figure out how to cover it, why not? Right? I mean, they got to call a timeout. You're still not going to fix that in a timeout. That's going to have to be a halftime thing. Maybe you could fix that at a quarter break if the offense is still out there. It's hard to fix shit in the middle of a game.
Yeah, if the players that are the primary focal point of that game, of that play, are that much better, then the guys that they're matched up against, that it's being executed that well, then I would think that,
Yeah,
yeah, if you've got a mismatch, you've got a mismatch.
right. And Dub Maddox calls it capped, right? Coverage, alignment, personnel. So I'm going to run a fade. Mark Richt did this against UVA a few years ago. He just kept running a fade into guys that were like 12 yards off the ball. That's stupid. The route should break down and come back to a comeback or a hitch, right? Why are you running a vertical route into a guy 12 yards deep? That's the dumbest thing you can do. So Dub would say that that's coverage. That's taken away by coverage. The guy can suck. It doesn't matter. You better be. The difference between him and you better be monumental for you to win that if a guy's 12 yards deep on a fade. But if the guy's pressed, coverage is there, alignment's there, because you want the guy within 7 yards of the hard deck. Now the question is personnel. So sure, if the best cover corner in all of the NFL's on me, I'm not going to beat him deep probably, right? But if just a regular old Georgia Tech corner is on me and I'm allegedly this great wide receiver, well, we should be able to beat him with the P in personnel. So it all works on that capped coverage, alignment, personnel. Obviously, if a guy's 3 yards off and inside leverage, I can't run a slant into him, right? That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. So that would be the alignment in a sense, because he's inside shade, right? And giving me the CA, even if he's not as good. So capped and uncapped is a big one, for in regards to what's open. And that coverage, alignment, personnel is big. Right. If you've got a guy that you can beat, just keep throwing me the damn deep ball. Eventually, I've got to catch one of them. If you're going to play me press, Colby Young's getting played press man. He has to win one of those deep balls eventually. He's like 6'6".
Because I think we all grew up thinking that every pass play was this wide receiver runs this route, this wide receiver, it's all drawn up and they're running it out and they're running across and regardless of what the defense is doing. Well, all you have to do is start watching football and you see that's not the case, that there's a lot of communication between wide receiver and quarterback in terms of what they're seeing and whether they should break off the route or do whatever. And that obviously comes with a lot of reps between quarterback and wide receiver core so that they're on the same page. So they're seeing what they need to see. Otherwise, there's a lot of mistakes that can come from that.
Well, and people were much more rigid in the Bill Walsh West Coast, right? It was very rigid. The steps were aligned. It's got to be thrown right to this exact spot at this time and all that. It was very rigid back then. But I think, when Mike Leach and Hal Mummy decided we don't have the same guys that everybody else does, we got to let these guys just play ball. And I think that became more sandlot football or 3-on-3 pickup basketball sort of mentality of why are we hindering people? Let's make this a little more fluid and a little more open. And, the old stories of Mike Leach where the quarterback would say, well, I tried to go to the first read. And he was like, I don't care who the first read is. Just throw the damn guy who's open. Like, why aren't you just finding the guy who's open? Easier said than done. But, that's why Phil Longo's now at Wisconsin has a straight drop. That way you can see the whole field. If you drop this way, you're only seeing one side of the field. You kind of cut that side off of you, right? That's only the third read. Well, if I drop straight back and I know I'm reading the safety, now I can at least get to the left side too. And I'm not cutting half the field off. So even the old Dennis Erickson straight drop, at least when he was at UNC, I haven't really seen much of Wisconsin, but when I would go to a lot of stuff with him in UNC, that's how he was doing it.
Good stuff with Justin DeTavio. Check out his work at State of the U. We're here every Wednesday night with all of you talking Miami football, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Make it on back. Some of you have joined us since we started. Obviously, you can watch the beginning and watch us all the way through once this video posts, which should be immediately. Right, Justin, anything else you wanted to hit on tonight?
No, we covered most of it. Somebody had asked on Twitter about when you have less talent, what are we seeing out there? I think some of the teams with, obviously Miami has a higher blue chip ratio than Georgia Tech. So what do you find? You've got to find that. I used to pick on 2 players a game, right? So if I thought, man, that defensive end on that side is soft, I'm going to kick the crap out of that guy. I'm going to read him on inside zone going away from him. I'm going to run split zone and kick him out. When we run our trap game, that's the guy we're going to kick all the way out to the sideline and blindside him. We're going to throw a screen over his head. Then we're going to come right back and make him try to pass rush. We were just going to abuse one guy over and over and over again. So we would really pick on a 5 technique and figure that guy out. When I was at one school here in North Carolina, we were clearly not as talented. We picked on a 4-star player. I think he plays at Oregon. Like, we picked on him over and over because he was just playing with pure talent and no football sense. And it was like, man, we could pull on this guy and just run right past him because he's going to scream upfield every single time and do crazy stuff. He's just trying to make a big play. He definitely picked sixed us on a screen, but that was tough. But, we were trying to call the screen right at him, and he just jumped up, no kidding, in the air like 30-something inches and just picked the ball off with one hand, ran it back for a touchdown. But then we came right back at him, and we ran at him again. We kicked him a few times. We read him. So I think when the person who asked about, having less talent and beating somebody, I do think you do it with kicking. I think you do it with culture. And I think that you do it with finding someone to pick on. So you find that player. Maybe it's a guard that's just, man, he doesn't help the center at all, right? He's weak. In Casino, he said you got to find the weak dealer, right? Who picks their cards up too high. Find that guy. Who's the guy that you see tips every damn play? Who's the guy that is scared shitless that the throw is going over their head, right? Miami's had those guys, those corners in the past that you could tell were scared the minute that ball left the hand. Like, oh, shit, it's me, right? And I remember playing offensive line and thinking, damn, they called that play right behind my ass. They know they want to see if I can do it, right? Like, yeah, and I want to throw a ball right over your head and see if you'll actually make a play on it. Especially with if Kinchins isn't, 100%, can't play the whole game, and they've got to bump guys out of position they're uncomfortable with, pick on them. If you've got young defensive tackle, that's the guy I'm going to abuse the whole game. Find you a young defensive tackle, pick on him. Find you the backup center, pick on him, right? So that to me, the less talented teams, if you're really smart, you find somebody to pick on. You just abuse the crap out of that poor guy and, make him call mom later and ask for a transfer.
Falconer TRX leading the way once again, letting everyone know that you support here the Voice of College Football. You just share the videos out on social media, grab the link, throw it out there on social media. You've got social media influence that we don't have, so you reach people that we don't. Like the video and get on over to State of the U. Check out Justin's work right there as well. Justin, we appreciate you stopping in here on a Wednesday night and filling in for Cam.
Yeah, no problem. It's just worked out perfectly. Normally I do some strength and conditioning stuff at a community center, it's from volunteer work on Wednesday. So if you have any extra dough and you want to donate to Neighbor in Raleigh, North Carolina, they can always use the help. They do a lot for young kids. They also have a lawn service, and a moving service and a cleaning service. And a lot of it helps people who have been incarcerated to have a second chance. The hardest part once you've been incarcerated is coming back out and having a job because you have to check that box, right? And so, have you been arrested, convicted felony? It's really hard. So Neighbor to Neighbor, end to end, they're a great organization downtown here in Raleigh, and they do a lot for kids, but also a lot for people that have just, made a stupid mistake in life and have gone through some hard times and just needs a little help getting back up.
We all need second chances, folks, one way or the other. It may not be in that area, but in any area of life, we all need 2, 3, 4, 5 chances in different ways. So Neighbor to Neighbor. Justin, we appreciate you being here.
No problem, man. Thank you.
Check out our post game here at the Voice of College Football after Miami and Georgia Tech get done with Alex, with Slim Shady, with Traveling Fools. They'll be here after the game. So we'll see you then.